On April 15, 1984, at 6:43 p.m., a Burger King employee in Arlington, Virginia, noticed something that didn't make sense. A customer at the drive-thru had placed the same order at the same time 3 Fridays in a row, and he never opened the bag of food. The restaurant was less than 5 miles from the Pentagon, on a direct access route to the major highways connecting Washington, D.C. to the suburbs of Northern Virginia. Thousands of cars passed through there every day. But what was happening at that particular drive-thru, hidden among ordinary fast food transactions, was anything but ordinary, and it was discovered not by federal agents or sophisticated surveillance technology, but by a 26-year-old assistant manager who noticed that some people weren't coming to Burger King for the food. Inspired by accounts and information revealed after the collapse of the Soviet Union, this dramatization explores the silent tensions that ran beneath ordinary American life in the 1980s, when global rivalries unfolded not only in embassies and battlefields, but in the most unlikely corners of everyday life. On the afternoon of April 15, 1984, something unfolded inside a Burger King in Arlington, Virginia, that would expose a Soviet intelligence operation operating in the shadows of the American capital for at least 2 years. The restaurant was located on Columbia Pike, a busy thoroughfare connecting the Pentagon to the residential neighborhoods of Northern Virginia. The location was strategic not only commercially but geographically. It was less than a 15-minute drive from the Department of Defense, 20 minutes from the CIA in Langley, and surrounded by apartment complexes that housed thousands of federal employees, military contractors, and intelligence analysts. Burger King had opened there in August 1982, replacing a hardware store that had gone out of business during the recession of the early 1980s. It had 32 seats inside, 6 employees on the afternoon shift, and a 2-lane drive-thru that processed an average of 280 cars per day during peak hours. Jennifer Caldwell was 26 years old and had been working as an assistant manager since the opening. Her responsibilities included supervising the afternoon shift from 2:00 p.m. to 10:00 p.m., training new employees, managing inventory, and ensuring that drive-thru speed standards were maintained. The corporate goal was 3 minutes and 30 seconds from order to delivery. Jennifer consistently kept her shift under 3 minutes and 15 seconds. It was during the slower periods between 6 and 7 p.m., when the dinner rush had not yet begun, that Jennifer often personally manned the drive-thru window. She enjoyed the direct interaction with customers, the predictable pace, and the small talk while processing payments and handing out bags. To Jennifer, each customer had a pattern. Night shift workers ordered coffee and simple sandwiches. Families ordered kids' meals and large sodas. Teenagers ordered extra fries and milkshakes. And then there was the man in the gray sedan who always ordered exactly the same thing. The first time Jennifer noticed the pattern was on Friday, March 30th, 1984, around 6:45 p.m. Business was slow. Only 4 cars had come through the drive-thru in the last half hour. When the gray sedan, a mid-70s Chevrolet Malibu, pulled up to the order window, Jennifer pressed the intercom button. "Welcome to Burger King. May I take your order?" The voice that answered was male, clear, with no noticeable accent. "A Whopper without onions, medium fries, and a medium Coke. That'll be $3.47. Please drive up to the next window." The car moved forward. Jennifer was already preparing the change when the man stopped at the delivery window. She looked up and saw a white man, approximately 40 years old, with short brown hair beginning to turn gray at the temples, wearing metal-rimmed glasses and a light blue dress shirt. He handed over a $5 bill, took the change, accepted the food bag with a polite "thank you," and drove off. Jennifer didn't think any more of it. It was an ordinary customer in an ordinary transaction. But the following Friday, April 6th at 6:47 p.m., the same grey sedan returned, and the man placed the same order, word for word. "A Whopper without onions, medium fries, and a medium Coke." Jennifer processed the order, handed him the bag, and the man left. This time, something about the exact repetition caught her attention for a split second before dissipating. People had their favorite orders. It wasn't unusual, but on April 13th at 6:45 p.m., when the grey sedan appeared for the 3rd Friday in a row, and the man made the identical order in the same neutral tone of voice, Jennifer felt something shift in her perception. She processed the payment, handed the bag through the window, and watched as the man placed the bag on the passenger seat without looking inside. And then, instead of immediately exiting onto Columbia Pike like most customers did, He drove slowly to the end of the parking lot, parked in a spot next to a trash can, and sat there. Jennifer continued to serve other cars, but her attention was divided. Through the side mirror of the drive-thru window, she could partially see the parking lot. The grey sedan remained stationary for exactly 4 minutes. She checked the clock on the wall. 6:52 p.m. when he arrived, 6:56 p.m. when he finally left. And during that entire time, the man did not open the bag of food. The following Friday, April 20th, Jennifer was prepared. She asked another employee, a college student named Marcus Webb, to take over the inside cash register, and she personally took over the drive-thru window at 6:30 p.m. At 6:44 p.m., the grey sedan appeared. "Welcome to Burger King. What can I get for you?" A Whopper without onions, medium fries, and a medium Coke. Identical, even the rhythm of his speech. Jennifer prepared the order with extra care, ensuring it was ready exactly as specified. When the man pulled up to the window, she handed him the bag and watched as he placed it on the passenger seat without looking. He paid with another $5 bill, took his change, thanked her, and drove off. Jennifer immediately exited through the restaurant's side door and walked to the edge of the parking lot, pretending to check the outside trash can. The grey sedan had parked in the same spot as before, next to the trash can in the far corner. From where she stood, Jennifer could partially see through the rear windshield. The man sat motionless, staring straight ahead. The bag of food remained unopened on the passenger seat. Then at 6:49 p.m., a second car entered the parking lot. It was a late-model brown Ford Taurus, driven by a younger man, perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair and a black leather jacket. The Taurus parked 3 spaces to the left of the grey sedan. The engine shut off, and for approximately 90 seconds, nothing happened. Neither man got out of his vehicle. Neither moved visibly. Then the man in the Taurus opened the driver's door, got out, walked casually toward the dumpster as if to discard something, and passed directly by the driver's window of the grey sedan. He was holding something in his right hand, too small for Jennifer to identify from a distance. He made a quick, almost imperceptible movement toward the sedan's half-open window, then continued walking toward the trash can, where he deposited what appeared to be an empty coffee cup. The man returned to the Taurus, got in, and left the parking lot through the opposite exit. 30 seconds later, the man in the grey sedan started the engine and drove away as well, heading down Columbia Pike toward Washington, D.C. The Burger King bag of food was never opened. Jennifer stood there for a long moment, rag still in hand, processing what she had just witnessed. That night, after her shift ended at 10 p.m., Jennifer drove straight to her older brother Thomas Caldwell's apartment in Falls Church. Thomas had served in the Army for 6 years and now worked as a security analyst for a contractor that did work for the Department of Defense. If anyone knew what to do with what she had seen, it would be him. Thomas opened the door, still wearing his work clothes, his tie loosened, and listened as Jennifer described the 4 incidents. The repeated request, the strange behavior in the parking lot, the second car, the quick pass between the vehicles. When she finished, Thomas was silent for several seconds, then asked if she had written down the license plate numbers. Jennifer shook her head. She hadn't thought of that until after the cars had driven away. Thomas asked additional questions. How many times was she sure she had seen the pattern? Always at the same time, always on Fridays. Did the men look alike in any way? Did they talk to each other? Jennifer answered as best she could. 4 Fridays, always between 6:40 and 6:50 p.m. No, the men looked different. And no words were exchanged that she could hear. Thomas crossed his arms, stared out the apartment window for a long moment, and then said something Jennifer didn't expect. "You may have stumbled upon something serious." He explained that quick exchanges between vehicles, especially in public places like fast food drive-thrus, were classic techniques used in intelligence operations. They were called car-to-car passes, or brush passes, methods designed to transfer materials between an agent and a handler without establishing prolonged direct contact that could be observed or recorded. The problem, Thomas continued, was that reporting something like this to federal authorities without concrete evidence could result in nothing but wasted time. Or worse, it could make her look paranoid or misinformed. The decision was made that night. Next Friday, if the pattern repeated itself, Jennifer would document everything. License plates, exact times, detailed physical descriptions. And if she could gather enough evidence, Thomas would help her take the information to the FBI. On April 27, 1984, Jennifer arrived at work at 1:30 p.m., an hour earlier than her normal shift, and spent the first 30 minutes positioning herself where she would have the best view of the drive-thru and parking lot. She tucked a small notebook and pen into her uniform pocket, hidden under her apron. At 6:42 p.m., the grey sedan arrived. A Whopper without onions, medium fries, and a medium Coke. Jennifer mentally noted the time. She prepared the order, handed over the bag, and watched as the man paid, placed the food on the passenger seat without opening it, and drove to the corner of the parking lot. This time, Jennifer was prepared. The moment the sedan parked, she exited the restaurant's side door with a trash bag in her hand as a cover, walked to the nearest outdoor trash can in the parking lot, and positioned herself where she had a clear view while pretending to organize the trash. At 6:48 p.m., the brown Ford Taurus pulled into the parking lot. Jennifer discreetly pulled her notebook from her pocket and wrote down the license plate as the Taurus drove by. VRG 4291. The Taurus parked 3 spaces to the left of the grey sedan, just as it had the week before. Jennifer noted the position, the time, 6:48 p.m. Then she watched. 90 seconds of silence. No visible movement in either car. Then the younger man got out of the Taurus. Jennifer saw clearly this time. He had something small in his right hand, held casually so that it would be invisible to anyone not paying specific attention. It appeared to be an envelope, no larger than 4x6 inches, beige or light brown in color. The man walked toward the trash can, passing directly by the driver's window of the grey sedan. The window was open about 2 inches. As he passed, there was a quick movement, too fluid to be accidental. The younger man's hand passed through the window gap for a split second, and as he continued walking toward the trash can, his hands were empty. He tossed what appeared to be a crumpled coffee cup into the trash can, returned to the Taurus, and drove out of the south exit of the parking lot. Jennifer noted 6:50 p.m. Transfer confirmed. Small envelope, driver's window. 30 seconds later, the man in the grey sedan started the engine and drove east on Columbia Pike. Jennifer returned to the restaurant, went straight to the employee bathroom, locked the door, and wrote down everything she could remember: physical descriptions, clothing, make and model of the cars, the Taurus's license plate, everything. That night, she showed the notebook to Thomas. He read silently, turned the pages, and when he was done, looked at Jennifer with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "You need to call the FBI first thing in the morning." On Saturday, April 28th, at 9:17 a.m., Jennifer Caldwell called the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., and was transferred 3 times before she was able to speak to someone who took her report seriously. The person on the line was Special Agent Karen Dietrich, a counterintelligence agent who had been working Soviet espionage cases since the late 1970s. When Jennifer described the pattern of behavior, the transfers in the parking lot, and the fact that it was occurring less than 8 miles from the Pentagon, Dietrich's voice shifted from polite skepticism to focused attention. A meeting was scheduled for Monday, April 30th at 10 a.m. at the field office. Jennifer arrived accompanied by Thomas, who had the day off from work. They were led to a conference room on the 3rd floor, where Agent Dietrich and a second agent, Special Agent Vincent Mercer, were waiting for them. Over the next 2 hours, Jennifer recounted everything: the 4 Fridays, the identical order, the behavior in the parking lot, the transfer of the envelope. She handed over the notebook with her notes, including the Ford Taurus's license plate number. The agents asked detailed questions. Did the man in the sedan ever enter the restaurant? Did he speak to other employees? Were there security cameras in the parking lot? Would Jennifer be able to recognize the men if she saw photographs? Jennifer answered as best she could. No, the man always used the drive-thru. No, he never interacted with other employees besides her. No, Burger King did not have external cameras, only an internal camera pointed at the cash registers. And yes, she believed she would be able to recognize both men. Agent Dietrich wrote everything down, then explained what would happen next. The FBI would run a check on the Taurus's license plate and do a preliminary search of intelligence databases to see if there were any matching records. If the information proved credible, a surveillance operation would be established. Jennifer was instructed not to discuss what she had seen with anyone else, not even other Burger King employees, and to continue working as usual. If the pattern continued the following Friday, She was to observe, but not do anything that might alert the men that they were being monitored. The license plate check came back in 36 hours. The brown Ford Taurus was registered to a man named Alan Jeffrey Morrison, 37, who lived in a condominium in McLean, Virginia. Morrison worked as a software engineer for a technology company called Datacom Systems, which had contracts with the Department of Defense and the NSA. He had top-secret security clearance. On May 2, 1984, a task force was assembled to investigate what was now being treated as a potential case of active espionage. Agent Dietrich led the operation, assisted by Agent Mercer and 4 additional agents specializing in physical surveillance and counterintelligence analysis. The first priority was to identify the man in the gray sedan. Without a license plate or name, the team relied on Jennifer's physical description and the statistical probability that the pattern would continue. On Friday, May 4th, the surveillance operation was activated. 2 FBI agents were positioned inside Burger King, one dressed as a customer reading a newspaper at a corner table, the other posing as a construction worker on his dinner break. 3 unmarked vehicles were parked at strategic locations around Columbia Pike, ready to establish mobile surveillance the moment either man left the premises. Jennifer worked her normal shift, taking over the drive-thru window at 6:30 p.m. She had been instructed to act exactly as she would on any other Friday. If the gray sedan appeared, she would process the order as usual and observe without doing anything unusual. At 6:44 p.m., the gray sedan entered the drive-thru. Agent Dietrich, monitoring via radio from a surveillance vehicle parked next to a hardware store 50 meters to the north, received immediate confirmation. Target Alpha in sight. Gray sedan, Chevrolet Malibu, approximately model 76 or 77. License plates not visible yet. Jennifer processed the order. 1 Whopper without onions, medium fries, and a medium Coke. As the car pulled up to the delivery window, one of the undercover agents inside the restaurant casually walked toward the window with a tray of food, positioning himself where he could see through the glass. He saw the man clearly: grayish-brown hair, metal-rimmed glasses, white shirt. And when the car moved forward slightly to get the change, the agent saw the rear license plate, VRG 8847. The license plate was radioed in before the sedan left the drive-thru. The man drove to the corner of the parking lot, parked next to the trash can, and waited. At 6:48 p.m., the brown Ford Taurus entered the parking lot. The Taurus parked 3 spaces to the left. 90 seconds of silence. Then Morrison got out, walked to the trash can, passed through the sedan's half-open window, and there was a quick transfer. Small envelope, empty hands afterward. FBI agents observed everything through binoculars and long-range cameras. When Morrison returned to the Taurus and left the parking lot, 2 unmarked vehicles began mobile surveillance. When the gray sedan left 30 seconds later, a 3rd vehicle followed it. Morrison drove north on the George Washington Parkway, crossed the Chain Bridge, and continued for approximately 15 minutes before parking in front of his condominium in McLean. He entered the building with a black leather briefcase that agents had not seen when he left the Taurus. The gray sedan was followed on a longer route. The driver headed east on Columbia Pike, entered I-395 toward Washington, D.C., exited at Crystal City, and continued through several residential streets before parking in front of an apartment complex on South Joyce Street in Arlington. Agents noted the address, the unit number where the man entered, and broke surveillance to avoid detection. A check of the gray sedan's license plate came back the next day. The vehicle was registered to Eugene David Kowalski, 43, a budget analyst working for the General Accounting Office, a branch of Congress responsible for auditing federal spending. Kowalski did not have classified security clearance. His position was purely administrative. But through his work at the GAO, he had access to information about budget allocations for military and intelligence projects, including how much money was being spent on specific programs, which contractors were receiving funds, and what strategic priorities were being financed. Information that, to a foreign intelligence service, could be extremely valuable. For the next 3 weeks, surveillance was maintained on both men. Agents monitored their daily routines, their social contacts, their movements on weekends. Morrison went to work every day at Datacom Systems, came home around 6 p.m., and rarely went out on weeknights. His weekends were spent shopping, mowing the lawn, and occasionally meeting friends at local bars. On the surface, he appeared to be an ordinary suburban software engineer leading an ordinary life. Kowalski followed an equally mundane routine. Work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Dinner at home. TV. On Saturdays, he visited his elderly mother in Bethesda. On Sundays, he played golf at a public course in Falls Church. Nothing about either man screamed Soviet spy to casual observers, but every Friday at 6:45 p.m., the pattern repeated itself. Kowalski would pull up to the Burger King drive-thru. He placed the same order. He parked in the same spot. Morrison showed up 4 minutes later. The transfer took place. They left. On May 18th, Agent Dietrich made the decision to intensify the investigation. A court order was obtained to install listening devices in Morrison's apartment and monitor his phone lines. A second warrant was obtained for Kowalski's apartment. The installation took place during the workday when both men were out. FBI agents entered discreetly, placed microphones in living rooms, bedrooms, and kitchens, and installed interception equipment on phone lines. Over the next 2 weeks, the microphones picked up mundane conversations. Morrison talking to his mother on the phone about home repairs, Kowalski watching baseball games. No mention of espionage, intelligence, or anything remotely suspicious. It was as if both men knew they might be under surveillance and were conducting their domestic lives with constant awareness of potential eavesdropping. But on June 1st, at 11:37 p.m., the microphone in Morrison's apartment picked up something. Morrison was alone. The TV was off, and for approximately 3 minutes and 20 seconds, he spoke quietly on the phone in a language that the agents monitoring the live feed did not immediately recognize. The recording was sent to linguistic experts at the FBI. The analysis came back 4 hours later. Russian. Morrison, the software engineer with top-secret clearance working on systems for the Department of Defense, was fluent in Russian, a skill that did not appear on his resume, his security application, or any personnel document the FBI had reviewed. The decision was made that night. Both men would be arrested simultaneously the next time the transfer occurred, before either had a chance to destroy evidence or alert additional handlers. The target date was set, Friday, June 8, 1984. On the morning of June 8, 1984, 15 FBI agents gathered in an empty warehouse 2 miles from the Burger King in Arlington for the final briefing on the operation. Agent Dietrich presented the execution plan in detail. At 6:30 p.m., 6 agents would position themselves in and around the Burger King, disguised as customers and maintenance workers. 4 surveillance vehicles would be positioned at strategic points around the parking lot. 2 additional agents would be on standby at both targets' apartments, ready to execute search warrants the moment the arrests were confirmed. The timing was critical. The arrests had to take place immediately after the transfer, while both men were still in the parking lot and before either of them could flee or dispose of evidence. At 6:35 p.m., all agents were in position. Jennifer Caldwell worked her shift as usual, aware of the tension but maintaining her routine. She had been informed that morning that today would be the day. At 6:44 p.m., Eugene Kowalski's gray sedan pulled into the drive-thru. A Whopper without onions, medium fries, and a medium Coke. Jennifer processed the order, handed over the bag, and watched as Kowalski drove to the corner of the parking lot. Agent Dietrich confirmed via radio. Target Alpha in position, awaiting Target Bravo. At 6:48 p.m., Alan Morrison's brown Ford Taurus pulled into the parking lot. Target Bravo in sight. All agents stand by. Morrison parked 3 spaces to the left of the sedan. 90 seconds of silence. Then he got out of the vehicle, small envelope in his right hand, and walked toward the trash can. As he passed the driver's window of Kowalski's sedan, the transfer took place. Quick movement. Envelope passed through the half-open window. Agent Dietrich gave the command. Execute, execute, execute. 4 FBI vehicles converged on the parking lot from different directions, blocking all exits. Agents got out with their weapons drawn and IDs raised. Morrison froze 3 meters from the Taurus, hands now empty, eyes wide. 2 agents surrounded him, shouted commands to kneel, and handcuffed him in less than 15 seconds. Kowalski tried to start the sedan's engine. The car started, but before he could put it in gear, 1 FBI vehicle blocked the front and another blocked the rear. Agents yelled at him to turn off the engine and put his hands on the steering wheel. He complied. Both men were removed from their vehicles, searched and placed in separate FBI vehicles. The entire confrontation lasted less than 2 minutes. Agents immediately began searching both cars. In Kowalski's sedan, between the front seats, they found the envelope Morrison had just handed him. Inside was $3,000 in $50 and $100 bills and a small piece of paper with a handwritten code, VTXR 22298 June. In Morrison's Taurus in the glove compartment, agents found a second 35mm camera and 3 rolls of undeveloped film. Simultaneously, FBI teams executed search warrants on both apartments. In Morrison's apartment in McLean, agents found a safe hidden behind a panel in the closet wall containing $47,000 in cash photography equipment, including macro lenses designed to copy documents, a shortwave radio tuned to frequencies used by Soviet broadcasts, 3 passports, 1 American in his real name, and 2 Canadian with false names. In Kowalski's apartment in Arlington, agents found classified documents taken from the General Accounting Office, including budget reports for nuclear, weapons programs, handwritten notebooks containing notes on defense projects, $18,500 in cash, hidden inside an air conditioning unit, a map of metropolitan D.C. with locations marked, including the Burger King in Arlington. Both men were transported to separate FBI facilities for questioning. Morrison immediately invoked his right to remain silent and refused to answer any questions without a lawyer. He sat silently for 6 consecutive hours, making no eye contact with the agents, acknowledging no questions. Kowalski, however, began to break down after 2 hours. When agents presented photographs of the evidence found in his apartment, including the classified documents, he asked for water, sat silently for several minutes, and then asked what deal was available if he cooperated. Within the next 48 hours, Eugene Kowalski confessed. Eugene David Kowalski admitted that he had been recruited by a Soviet intelligence officer in October 1981 during a federal budget conference in Philadelphia. The officer, whom Kowalski knew only as Sergei, had approached him at a hotel bar, struck up a conversation about fiscal policy, and over several weeks cultivated what appeared to be a genuine friendship. Sergei eventually made his proposal. He represented interests that believed American military spending was destabilizing the global balance of power, and that transparency in that spending would serve the cause of peace. He asked Kowalski for budget documents, not operational secrets, just numbers and allocations, and offered payment. Kowalski, who was struggling with credit card debt and an underwater mortgage after his divorce in 1980, accepted. For the first 6 months, transfers took place through various methods: dead drops in parks, meetings in shopping malls. But in the summer of 1982, Sergei introduced Alan Morrison as Kowalski's new handler and established the Burger King protocol. Morrison, Kowalski explained, never gave his real name. He always referred to himself as Victor. The instructions were simple. Every Friday, Kowalski would drive through the drive-thru, buy the same order, and park in the corner of the parking lot. Morrison would show up 4 minutes later, conduct the transfer, and they would both leave. The system worked for almost 2 years without interruption. Kowalski insisted that he never met other members of the network, never communicated with anyone other than Morrison, and did not know where the documents went after they were handed over. The investigation into Alan Morrison proved more complicated. He continued to refuse to cooperate, and without a confession, prosecutors relied on physical evidence and Kowalski's testimony. Analysis of the film rolls found in Morrison's car revealed photographs of classified documents related to satellite communication systems, technical specifications for encryption hardware, and network diagrams for NSA facilities. Analysis of the fake passports revealed that Morrison had traveled to Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver multiple times between 1982 and 1984 using Canadian identities. Investigators believed that these trips were for personal meetings with KGB handlers operating in Canada. On August 15, 1984, both Eugene Kowalski and Alan Morrison were formally charged with multiple counts of espionage under Title 18 of the United States Code. Kowalski negotiated a plea bargain in exchange for a reduced sentence. On October 3, 1984, he pleaded guilty in federal court in the Eastern District of Virginia. During the sentencing hearing, prosecutors argued that Kowalski had compromised national defense programs out of greed, that he had sold his country's security for approximately $65,000 over 3 years. Kowalski's defense attorney argued that his client had been manipulated by sophisticated intelligence professionals, that he had cooperated fully, and that he expressed genuine remorse. The The judge sentenced Eugene Kowalski to 15 years in federal prison, noting that while his cooperation was noteworthy, the betrayal he committed put American lives at risk. Alan Morrison went to trial in January 1985. During the 3-week trial, prosecutors presented physical evidence, testimony from FBI agents, Jennifer Caldwell's testimony, and Kowalski's testimony. Morrison did not testify in his own defense. The jury deliberated for 7 hours before returning with a verdict, guilty on all counts. On February 14, 1985, Alan Morrison was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The judge noted that Morrison had operated as a foreign intelligence agent with sophistication and premeditation, that he had exploited his access to classified information for the benefit of a hostile power, and that he had refused to show any cooperation or remorse. Morrison served 28 years before dying in prison in 2013. Kowalski was released on parole in 1997 after serving 13 years and died in 2008. The Burger King in Arlington remained open until 2003, when it was closed during a corporate consolidation. The building was demolished in 2005 and replaced by an apartment complex. Jennifer Caldwell continued working at Burger King until 1986, when she left to attend community college. She never spoke publicly about her role in the case until an interview in 2019, 35 years after the events, when she described how a simple observation about a repeated order led her to dismantle an active Soviet spy operation. In her own words, she never considered herself a hero. She just noticed something that didn't make sense and decided it was worth a second look. The story of Eugene Kowalski and Alan Morrison illustrates how Cold War intelligence operations often depended not on sophisticated technology or dramatic confrontations, but on mundane routines performed in ordinary places where no one would think to look twice. A fast food drive-thru, a repeated order, a 3-second transfer, and for almost 2 years, it worked perfectly, until someone paid attention. If you found this story fascinating, you need to hear about how a Starbucks barista turned a drink order into a secret KGB meeting point, where codes were passed through names written on coffee cups, and where one switched letter exposed a spy ring that spanned 3 continents.